team.
Hey there, this is Malorian, and this is the Orc Tactical Team, and the question today comes from one of, well, I think he's a viewer, but it's another YouTuber. It is Whoopie Womp, also known as Dylan. You usually see him on the Long Island Wargaming, where he does the Warhammer Weekly, but his question is, Malorian, could you talk about the benefits of playing outside of your comfort level? Now, the big thing here is that I've talked about in the past about playing outside of the box. And the idea there is that you take what is normally done, like, okay, if it's Warriors of Chaos, it's taking the Nurgle Demon Prince and the Chimeras and all the chariots and maybe trolls or something, and saying, you know what, like what he does, I'm just going to run a horde of Forsaken, right? Do something that nobody else does. There's another part, though, too, where you can get the benefit from just playing outside of your own comfort level. And what that is really is just your own personal box. So we're not really looking at what everybody does. We're looking at what you yourself run. So for my part here, let's say for my orcs and goblins, normally I am going to be always running my savage orc biggins. I'm going to be running my black orcs. I'm going to have my regular war machines. I'm going to buy level 4. I probably have the trolls in there sometimes too. And really, when I'm making a list, I just kind of throw these things together, and then I have the last few points that I can deal with as I wish. Now, what if I was to completely change this? What if I was to say, like, well, okay, well, instead of doing that, I'm going to start running maybe a level 4 Night Goblin. I'm going to start running only a level 2, and I'll put more points into a war boss. I'm going to go and I'm going to take goblins rather than Night Goblins. I'm going to take more Cav. I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to do this. Now, in one part here, you can say, well, that's just making your list less competitive. But it doesn't have to, right? I could be changing my regular list to be more of a Night Goblin list. I could be going to the big block of 100 Night Goblins with a lot of characters in there. You know, that's a very competitive one that I don't really ever play. Now, what's the real benefit to doing this? Well, there's a couple things that come up. First of all, probably one of the most important things it can do for you is it'll break the monotony of the army. I know that sometimes now, I actually sometimes get bored of my orcs and goblins because of what I just said. When it's time to make a list, I know, like, oh, what's the point size? Oh, 2,400? I'll grab my standard 2,400 point list. Or, oh, is it some other point list I don't have a list made for? Okay, well, throw in the savage orc biggins, throw in the black orcs, throw in this and this, and then fill in for points, like I said. And I guess the point where it gets a little bit boring. So you can actually kind of get Warhammer burnout if you don't go and change these things up. And really, by forcing yourself to go outside of your comfort level really just refreshes the game for you. You start thinking about the game. Now, the next point is actually more of a tactical note there, where if I'm always grabbing the same things over and over and over again, I start getting into also a routine of what my game is going to be. I'm always going to deploy this way. This is where my characters are going to go. I'm going to try and 6 dice this spell. I'm going to be pushing up this. I'm going to do this. And this can actually be tactically bad because what you can do is get into such a routine of doing the same thing over and over and over again that when you get to either a scenario or an army that you shouldn't be using that same tactics against, you just fall into your normal routine and start doing it, and then, wow, that was actually a bad idea. I really should not have played it that way. I should have played it more defensively. I should have changed my deployment, whatever it should be. And if you're doing that, if you're playing outside your comfort level, what it's forcing you to do is play your game and say, wow, I can't do what I normally do because I have these completely different units. So I am actively forcing myself to think about the way I'm playing the game. And if I'm starting to swap these back and forth, let's say, you know, I want to save my comfortable army for a tournament. If before the tournament I take something that's out of my comfort zone, I'm refreshing that myself. And I'm forcing myself to sharpen the saw and to go and make sure that I'm thinking about the actual game. Now, Another big benefit you can get from going outside of your comfort level is actually discovering new units that you didn't like before, new units and new tactics. I know a good example for myself is when I started just kind of forcing in there extra heroes, right? And it wasn't until I started adding in these extra crappy heroes that I realized, oh, I could be using characters to do a double flee. And then all of a sudden, that was a tactic that I could apply to my regular army. So I had this army that was a bunch of mix of different things, and then I start learning different deployments, different abilities, different tactics that I can then apply to my regular tournament army. And another part of this too is it also forces you to learn other types of units. Again, if I'm using my orcs and goblins, I'm doing the same type of ones over and over and over again. Well, if I force myself to start using different types of models, say now I'm going to do chariots, I'm going to do more cav, I'm going to do more random movement things, it forces me to better understand those parts of the game. You know, if I'm all of a sudden forcing myself to use pump wagons and people are starting to railroad me where they're putting something beside me, forcing me to go a certain direction, well, I start thinking about that more and how I can be using it against my opponent. So again, once I go back to my regular tournament army, I can be using that new knowledge to use it against my actual opponent as these situations come up. So those are going to be the main points there of what you're really getting out of it. And again, too, I mean, you always have to throw in fun is there as well. I mean, it's part of that first part where when you're doing something different, it's making sure you're not going to get burnout. But you know what? Sometimes it's grabbing like, hey, let's just grab this time. I'm going to do this. You know, at first it might feel, especially if you're a real tournament focused player who's really competitive, it might really irk you. It might not really be your style. Like, well, this isn't really competitive. Why am I taking this? I'm just playing dumb. But no, you should just take this and say, hey, first of all, I'm not, like I said, it might just not be something that's not competitive. Maybe I'm taking something else that's just different. And accept that, have fun with it, try and explore it, see what's going to teach you. And overall, it's just going to make you a better gamer. So there you go, playing outside your comfort level, and we'll catch you next time.